Coordination. Sometimes when we are eating food, we accidentally bite our finger or tongue and we feel sudden pain. Similarly, sometimes when we eat food in a hurry, we choke. Why does this happen? When we accidentally bite our finger or tongue while eating food, a message is sent to the brain through the nervous control and due to which we get the sensation of pain. When we swallow or eat food hurriedly, food particles, instead of entering the food pipe, enter the windpipe. At that time, by choking or coughing, the food particle stuck in the windpipe is thrown out. This happens when there is no coordination between the two actions. In any multicellular organism, there are various tissue systems and organ systems. For proper functioning of an organism, there has to be perfect coordination among the different systems or organs and various stimuli from their surroundings. Thus, we can infer that control refers to the systematic regulation of various activities and coordination means the orderly execution of the activities. This attributes to an organism's proper growth and development. Any disturbance at any stage due to lack of coordination or other factors can leave the desired process incomplete. In order to complete the process successfully, there has to be a perfect coordination between different systems and organs involved at each step. There should not be any kind of randomness of any nature at any stage of the life process. In any living organism, there are many internal activities taking place due to body temperature, water level, enzyme level, and also due to external environmental stimuli. In all these activities, there should be perfect coordination. The maintenance of the steady state by different systems of an organism for its optimal functioning because of a perfect coordination is called homeostasis. Now let us understand how the process of coordination occurs in plants. Coordination in plants. Unlike animals, plants do not have a nervous system or muscular system. The movements exhibited by plants are mainly in response to the stimulus. The movement or growth of any part of a plant in response to an external stimulus is called tropism or tropic movement. The shoot system of any plant responds towards the stimulus of light. That is, it grows in the direction of the source of light. This movement exhibited by the plant is called phototropic movement. The root system responds to the stimulus of gravity as well as of water. These responses are called gravitropic movements and hydrotropic movements respectively. The movement shown by parts of the plant in response to certain chemicals is known as chemotropism. The growth of the pollen tube towards the ovules is an example of this type. All these movements are related to the growth of the plant. Hence, such movements are called movements of plants which are growth dependent. Through the science window. Tendrils of vines are sensitive to touch. Auxins, gibberellins, cytokinins, abscisic acid are examples of plant hormones. Let us understand the role of these hormones in brief. Auxins are synthesized at the shoot tip that help in cell enlargement. Gibberellins help in the growth of the stem, while cytokinins promote cell division. Abscisic acid is effective in inhibiting the growth of plants, slowing the process of growth, causing wilting of leaves. Let us perform an activity. Activity: take a wide-mouthed, shallow bottle and keep moist cotton inside the bottle. Place a few sprouted seeds of bean or green gram or Bengal gram on it. observe the seeds for a few days for the direction of growth of radicle, which is the sprout, and the plumule, which is the shoot. We observe that the radicle grows towards the water, which is available in the moist cotton, while the plumule grows towards sunlight. Now, let us pick up some sprouts and carefully place them in such a way that the radicle is towards the source of light and the plumule is directed away from the light. Observe the direction of the growth of the seeds every day. We can see that the radicle changes its direction by curving its axis. The plumule also shows a similar change by curvature of its axis towards light. We can thus conclude that the radicle responds positively to the stimulus of water and hence grows towards it and away from light, while the plumule responds positively to the stimulus of light and hence grows towards it and away from water. Thus, plants respond to the stimuli which are perceived from their external environment. If you carefully observe a mimosa plant, we see that movement also happens at a place different from the place of touch. Thus, we can conclude that the information that a touch has occurred must have been communicated. Plants use electrochemical means to transfer information from one part to another. The plant cells change their shape by altering the amount of water in them, which ultimately results in the movement of the parts of the plant. Certain movements of plants do not result in their growth. Such movements are termed as growth-independent movements. Hormones bring about various movements in plants in response to changes occurring in their surroundings. Apart from mimosa, there are other plants which show such growth-independent responses. Let us learn more about this. Do you know? Insectivorous plants like the Venus flytrap have a special trap which looks and smells like a flower to insects. When insects land on the trap, it gets shut, catching the insect inside, and the insect is later digested by the plant. When an insect touches the insectivorous plant like Drosera, the tentacles present on the leaves curl inwards and trap the insect. The lotus flower opens only in the morning, and the tuberose opens only at night. In the case of the balsam plant, at an appropriate time, the fruit bursts open, which results in scattering of seeds. After understanding the coordination in plants, let us now learn about the coordination in human beings. Coordination in human beings. Assume that an inter-house basketball match is in progress at the court of a school. If we observe the movement of the eyes, hands, and legs of the players, it is difficult to distinguish between any of these movements because they occur very rapidly and simultaneously. During the match, some players keep on moving the ball and pass it on to their team members. One of the players shoots the ball through the basket situated at the end of the basketball court. When the ball drops from the basket, players catch it quickly and the game proceeds further. In between, the players of one team try to snatch the ball from the players of the opposite team. The ball is blocked from the players of the opposite team by dribbling it continuously on the ground. In this case, we observe that there is coordination between different organs of the body, that is the eyes, hands, and legs. Not only while playing, but also while performing various day-to-day activities such as operating kitchen gadgets like mixer grinder and oven for household cooking purposes, or driving a car, cycling, or operating a machine for some work, or even other activities like reading, writing, and dancing. We require control and coordination. In human beings, different activities take place simultaneously. They have to be coordinated efficiently and effectively. The coordination of different activities of the body are controlled by two mechanisms, namely the nervous control and the chemical control. Let us now study about nervous control. Nervous control. Human beings have the ability to respond to changes in the environment due to the nervous control. Depending upon the changes in the environment, impulses are created in the human body. Response to these impulses is created by the cells. This important function is carried out by the nervous control. The function of giving response to the impulses depends upon the complexity of the organism. For example, in unicellular organisms like amoeba, we do not find a nervous system which can produce impulses and responses. But in multicellular organisms like man, a nervous control-like mechanism is at work for giving response to the impulses. To control this, bodies of multicellular organisms have specific types of cells. These cells are called neurons. Let us learn about them. Neuron. The cells which carry out the function of carrying messages from one part of the body to another are called neurons. Neurons are the basic structural and functional units of nervous system. The largest neuron in the human body is approximately few meters long. Neurons are capable of creating and transmitting electrochemical impulses. Cells which support and assist the neurons in their functions are called neuroglia. The nerves are composed of neurons and neuroglia. A neuron consists of dendrite, cell body, and axon. We know whether an object is hot or cold by the sense of touch. This information is picked up by the specialized tips of dendrites of a neuron. After this, a chemical reaction is set off, producing an electrical impulse which travels from the dendrite to the cell body. From the cell body, the impulse travels through the axon to its end. At the end of the first axon, the electrical impulse induces the release of some chemicals. These chemicals pass through a small gap known as synapse present between the neurons and start a similar electrical impulse in the dendrite of the next neuron. In this way, nerve impulses travel in the body from one neuron to the other by chemical means. Thus, impulses from the neurons are delivered to the muscle cells or glands. The muscle tissue brings about different actions or movements. For this movement to take place, muscle cells must move. Movement takes place when muscle cells change their shape. Due to this, the muscle cells shorten. Muscle cells possess special kinds of contractile proteins. These proteins not only bring about a change in the shape of the muscle cells, but also make them capable of responding to the nervous electrical impulse. We can thus say that the nervous tissue is composed of highly organized network of neurons capable of transferring information in the form of electrical impulses from one part of the body to another. Let us now understand in brief the specialized nervous systems in some animals. Do you know? In case of unicellular protozoan amoeba, we do not find a nervous system. The cell is sensitive enough to control all its life processes and activities. In case of certain coelentrates like Hydra, the nervous system is at a very primitive stage of development. In case of annelids like earthworm, number of nerve cells come together and form a cluster. These clusters are joined together to form a beaded structure called the nerve cord. Let us now understand about different neurons that carry out specific functions. Types of neurons. There are 5 sense organs in our body, namely the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. We receive a variety of information from the surrounding environment through these sense organs. Special receptors are present within these sense organs. These receptor cells are sensitive to a particular type of stimulus. For example, the eyes have photoreceptors to detect light. The ears have sound receptors to detect sound. The skin has thermoreceptors to detect temperature. There are receptors in the tongue and nose as well. These are known as the gustatory receptors and olfactory receptors respectively. Gustatory receptors detect taste, while olfactory receptors detect smell. According to their functions, neurons are classified into 3 groups: sensory neurons, motor neurons, and association neurons. Sensory neurons conduct impulses from the sense organs to the brain and spinal cord. Motor neurons conduct impulses from the brain and spinal cord to the effector organs like muscles and glands. Association neurons perform integrative or functions of the nervous system. After studying about the different types of neurons, now let us learn about the human nervous system. The human nervous system. The nervous system in human beings is divided into the central nervous system, the peripheral nervous system, and the autonomic nervous system. Let us now study each of these branches in detail. Central nervous system, or CNS. The central nervous system comprises of the brain and the spinal cord. Let us first understand the structure of the brain. Brain. The structure of the brain is very delicate but well developed. The brain is the most important part of the nervous system that controls all functions. The brain is covered by a bony structure called the cranium or skull, because of which it is protected. The spinal cord is protected by the vertebral column or the backbone. The space between the soft central nervous system and the bone is filled by the protective membranes called the meninges. There are cavities present on the different parts of the brain known as ventricles, while the spinal cord has a long cavity called the central canal. The ventricles, central canal, and the space between the meninges are filled with a specific fluid. This fluid is called the cerebrospinal fluid. The cerebrospinal fluid provides nourishment to the central nervous system and also protects it by absorbing mechanical shocks. The average weight of the human brain is approximately 1,300 to 1,400 grams and made of approximately 100 billion neurons. The left side of the brain controls the right side of the body, while the right side of the brain controls the left side of the body. Usually, the left side of the brain controls speaking, writing, and logical thinking, while the right side controls artistic abilities. Also, it is interesting to know how our memory works. Let us understand this. Sensory memory. Sensory memory is brief. It tells us about what is happening around us. Short-term memory. Short-term memory lasts only for a short while, up to 30 seconds. The example of short-term memory is that of us remembering a phone number and dialing it. It vanishes from our memory. Long-term memory is for things that we have carefully learned and memorized. The brain is a complex organ divided into different regions, namely the cerebrum, the cerebellum, medulla oblongata, and spinal cord. Let us learn about the structure and functions of these parts. Cerebrum. It is the largest part of the brain and is made up of two cerebral hemispheres. These hemispheres are connected by tough nerve fibers and the nerve track. Nearly two-thirds part of the brain is occupied by the cerebrum, hence it is called as the larger brain. The outer surface of the cerebrum is made up of irregular folds, wrinkles, and furrows. They are called convolutions. Due to these infoldings, the surface area of cerebrum increases, creating large space for the neurons. More the number of convolutions, more is the surface area of the cerebrum. Such a person has a large forehead. Such people are considered to be intelligent. The cerebrum is responsible for control of voluntary movements, concentration of the mind, planning, decision-making, memory power, intelligence, and intellectual activities. Cerebellum. This is a small part of the brain. It is situated in the posterior part of the cranium and below the cerebrum. On its outer surface, instead of folds, there are elevations and depressions. Bringing about coordination of the voluntary movements and maintaining balance of the body are the functions of the cerebellum. If the body is under the influence of excess amount of alcohol, then the functioning of the cerebellum is affected. Now you must have understood why a person who has consumed alcohol cannot maintain the balance of his body. Spinal cord. It is a part of the central nervous system and is firmly placed in the vertebral column. The spinal cord is somewhat flat in the anteroposterior part and ends in the fibrous strands. They are called phylum terminale. The spinal cord conducts impulses from the skin, ear, and sense organs to the brain, and also conducts impulses from the brain to the muscles and sense organs. It also functions as the coordinating center of the reflex actions. The central nervous system functions in this manner. Let us understand about the peripheral nervous system. Peripheral nervous system. Peripheral nervous system includes the nerves which arise from the central nervous system. These nerves connect all the parts of the body to the central nervous system. The nerves of the peripheral nervous system are of two types: cranial nerves and spinal nerves. The nerves which arise from the brain are called cranial nerves. The areas around the head and brain are associated with these nerves. There are 12 pairs of cranial nerves. The nerves arising from the spinal cord are called spinal nerves. The various organs and parts of the body are associated with these nerves. There are 32 pairs of spinal nerves. After understanding about the peripheral nervous system, now let us learn about the autonomic nervous system in brief. The autonomic nervous system. The nerves present in involuntary organs like the heart, lungs, and stomach make the autonomic nervous system. These organs are not controlled by our will. It is necessary to give fast and immediate response to certain dangerous situations. Let us understand what is meant by giving such responses. Reflex action. Whenever there is any sudden action in response to some happening in the environment, it is called as reflex action. In a reflex action, we react to certain situations without thinking about it, or sometimes without feeling in control of our reactions. These actions are in response to the stimulus received from our surrounding. Let us understand in detail about reflex actions with an example. Consider the act of touching a vessel containing very hot tea. It is a dangerous situation for us. In this case, there are chances of pain or getting wounded. Hence, we withdraw our hand. Let us understand how this happens. The nerves from all over the body meet in a bundle before impulses are sent to the brain. Although the messages reach the brain, reflex arcs are formed in the spinal cord. In this example, there is a rapid response to the stimulus of heat. In case of touching the hot object, the pathway for the conduction of impulses of heat is sensed by thermoreceptors of skin. This triggers the impulse to sensory neurons from where the message is transmitted to spinal cord. Then the impulse is further passed on to the motor neuron. The motor neuron passes the impulse to the muscle cells in our arm. The muscles act as an effector organ because it responds to the stimulus perceived by it by exhibiting the withdrawal movement of hand. Similarly, the response shown or reflex arc evolved when we accidentally touch the candle flame can be shown in this way. After understanding about the nervous control, now let us understand how chemical control takes place. Chemical control. The chemical control is brought about by chemical substances called hormones. The endocrine glands secrete hormones in our body. These glands do not have any duct to store or transport their secretions. Hence, they are called as ductless glands. Endocrine glands secreting hormones are located in particular places. Hormones on production are directly released into the bloodstream. Hormones reach all the parts of the body through the transporting fluid, blood. The endocrine system shares its responsibility of control and coordination with the nervous system. Both the systems work in cooperation to control and integrate the various body activities. The significant difference between the mechanism of functioning of these two systems is that the nerve impulses are rapid and usually of a short duration, while the hormonal action is much slower but long-lasting. It is important that hormones should be secreted according to the requirement. For this, the mechanism is necessary. The required quantity of hormone released as well as the time of release are regulated by the feedback mechanism. For example, when the sugar level of blood rises, it is detected by the cells of the pancreas which respond to the situation by producing more insulin. Now, let us understand the importance of glands in our body and their functions in detail. The hypothalamus is situated in the midbrain of the brain above the pituitary glands. It produces secretions which stimulate the cells of the pituitary gland to produce secretions. Its function is to stimulate the pituitary glands. The pituitary gland is present in the base of the brain. This gland secretes growth hormones, adrenal gland hormone, thyroid gland hormone, prolactin, oxytocin, and antidiuretic hormones. Its function is to promote growth of bones, promote secretions of the adrenal gland, promote lactation, contract the uterus during childbirth, assist the kidneys in regulating the amount of water. The thyroid gland is present in the middle portion of the neck on the front side, on either sides of the trachea. It secretes the hormones thyroxine and calcitonin. Its function is to regulate the growth of the body and metabolic activities. Besides, its function is also to produce iodine. Parathyroid gland. There are 4 parathyroid glands situated behind the thyroid gland. The parathyroid gland secretes the parathormone hormone. Its function is to regulate the metabolism of calcium and phosphorus in the body. The pancreas are situated behind the stomach. The pancreas consists of 4 types of cells: the alpha cells, beta cells, delta cells, and PP cells. Of the cells, alpha cells constitute 20%, beta cells 70%, delta cells 5%, and PP cells 5%. The pancreas secrete the hormones glucagon, insulin, somatostatin, and polypeptide. The functions of the pancreas are conversion of glycogen into glucose in the liver, regulation of sugar level in the blood, regulation of insulin and glucagon levels, regulation of absorption of glucose in the intestine, and regulation of movement. Besides these, it also carries out the function of regulation of digestive juices. The adrenal gland is present above both the kidneys. It secretes both the hormones, adrenaline and noradrenaline. Its function is to control emergency situations as well as emotional events, to stimulate the heart and vascular system, to promote metabolic activities. The ovaries are present in the females on either side of the uterus. The hormones estrogen and progesterone are secreted by the ovaries. The function of the ovaries is to develop the reproductive glands in females and also to bring about the growth and development of the ovum. The testicular gland lies behind the testis in the scrotum. It secretes the hormone testosterone. Its function is to develop the male reproductive glands and bring about the growth and development of sperms. The thymus is situated near the heart in the rib cage. It secretes the hormone thymosin. Its function is to regulate the immune cells.